Hey everyone, it's Haz here, and whether you're starting with early access to Lies of P or starting a little bit later, probably you'll wonder which starting weapon should you choose for the game, since it will greatly affect your first experience and enjoyment in a Souls-like such as this one. The choice will be right at the start of the game between three paths: the path of the cricket for balance, path of the bastard for dexterity, and path of the sweeper for strength. The build difference between the paths depend on how you'll want to level up your puppet, if you want to focus more on strength or dexterity, or motivity and technique in this case. The good news is that despite the early choice, you will be able to buy the two other weapons around 20 minutes later at the first shop, not to mention you'll be able to use a bunch of other weapons in the future too. But what exactly is the difference between the three playstyles, and how to decide which one to choose? Let's start with the good old strength choice, the Path of the Sweeper, which will give us the Greatsword of Fate two-handed blade that scales mainly with your motivity, your strength stat. The Greatsword has the highest stat among the three weapons for physical attack, pull, cells charge, and fable charge, but in this case that's mainly also because it is the slowest hitting weapon. So yes, the Greatsword attacks really slowly but hits quite hard. Most enemies you can completely destroy with heavy charge attack if you hold down the button, so if you prefer heavy hitters, that's exactly what it is. It's a slower and more methodical way of playing, very similar to traditional Dark Souls combat. Now, to get to the specifics, the most important thing about the Greatsword is that it has the highest damage reduction while guarding. While you don't have a shield, you can guard with all the weapons in Lies of P, and this attribute determines how much damage you'll suffer while blocking. If you listen to the tutorial, you know that all damage you take during guarding, you can recover by hitting enemies while you have the orange bar in your health bar, and this damage reduction stat directly helps regaining your health easier, since you'll be taking much less damage in the first place. There's another very important attribute in Lies of P while you're leveling up, and that is your guard regain stat in the common abilities section that you can level up with vitality. Guard regain is the stat that determines how much health you recover from your hits while you have recoverable health bar, and is the perfect combination with the strengths of the Greatsword, having great block values and high overall damage, as thanks to your high damage reduction, you will only have a short regain bar, and the higher vitality stat together with that high single hit damage of your Greatsword will instantly recover your health without an issue. If that wasn't enough, the Handle Fable ability of the Greatsword is absolute defense that will perfect block any attack coming at you during its duration, perfect for learning the game and if your reflexes aren't that great for those nasty red fury attacks from enemies. But keep in mind you can also mix and match handles later, so you can use this with other weapons too. Your Blade Fable attack is a 3-charge Fable Slash called Link Slash that you can use anytime during your attacks for bonus high damage slash, also really handy for recovering health. So all in all, I recommend the Path of the Sweeper for those who prefer a slower and more methodical playstyle, very similar to Sword and Board in Dark Souls if that's how you like to play, as you will have high single hit damage and perfect on-demand defense with your blocks. I also recommend leveling up Vitality first to be able to reliably heal back, and you will have yourself a quite tanky and safe beginner's build to get into Lies of P. Now let's talk about the Path of the Bastard, or the Dexterity path that starts with the Vintry Rapier that scales with your technique stat. The Rapier is the complete opposite of the Greatsword as you might expect, and is a very fast poking style weapon that can attack with a barrage of hits that completely staggers enemies and kills them before they can do anything. Because of the really fast attack speed, your damage is definitely lower, but it allows for much more error in your attack timings in order to dodge away or block more often, especially with your heavy attacks that has a backstab dodge built straight into it. Now while with a high vitality stat you can also heal back most of your guard, the Rapier has a much lower guard damage reduction, almost half as much, and you will take a lot more damage during guarding with this weapon, and since you have faster but much weaker attacks, you're not going to be able to recover your health as reliably as with the Greatsword, or at least not at the beginning of the game with your basic builds. So instead with the Rapier, you will want to avoid taking damage as much as possible and instead spend that stamina on dodging away or perfect parrying, for which it also starts with a special Handle Fable attack, the Guard Parry, that if you time perfectly for an enemy attack, you will parry it and immediately follow up with a barrage of special counterattacks. This Fable is pretty hard to learn, to be fair, it's a tight window, but the good news is that if you miss the timing, you won't be spending the point and you can keep practicing until you manage to finally connect your parry. The Blade Fable attack of the Rapier is a series of quick stabs called Storm Stab, but compared to the Greatsword, this will immediately use up all 3 of your Fable charges. So for this weapon, I recommend it to people who generally like dexterity builds in Souls games, or you much prefer the Bloodborne style of combat of dodging and parrying instead of blocking, as lighter weapons and dexterity will mostly favor jumping in and out quickly during fights for well-timed skirmishes. Additionally, I also think this weapon is generally better for people who play very aggressively, as like I said, you can easily stun lock most enemies, and since your attacks are very fast, you can also retreat when you need to, and won't be punished for an overly aggressive playstyle with long animations, like you would with the greatsword. Lastly, it's the path of the cricket, the balanced path, and as cliche as it sounds, yes, it's for the balanced playstyle between the two previous weapons, starting with the puppet saber, having balanced scaling between motivity and technique, and this possibly the originally designed and recommended weapon by the developers, if I had to guess just because of the name. Now originally I thought it's really going to be the combination of the rapier and the greatsword, but it's actually not quite that simple, and if I had to say, the saber feels more like a faster greatsword, but still not even close to the nimble playstyle of the rapier, though it's important to mention the saber might have the best overall combo of attacks that connects well into each other from the three weapon types, so it might be the most aggressive one. The major difference between the saber and the rapier is that the saber has slashing attacks which seemingly significantly reduce its range, so it's not so capable of jumping in and out of combat on demand like the rapier, but it attacks a lot faster than the greatsword, so you'll still have to be somewhat in the face of your enemies, but you can be a bit more aggressive as your faster attacks will allow for more opportunities to guard between attacks. This is also backed up by having an in-between good attribute of 50 for guard damage reduction, which is already enough to heal you back most of the time, similarly like the greatsword, so if you want to, you can build it towards a more tanky puppet. Now for the handle fable, the saber uses concentrate, which according to my tests is around a 15% damage increase aura you can activate on yourself. That's quite impressive honestly, and since it's a passive, it can be more useful to people who don't like timed abilities. Your saber's main fable on the other hand is Storm Slash, which is very similar to the rapier's Storm Stab of using all three of your fable charges for a combo of multiple hits. So overall, I would recommend the Path of the Cricket to those who prefer a more balanced playstyle that doesn't seem to lock you into specific extremes of either having to block too much and be tanky, or have to constantly dodge, but instead go with the flow of the game and keep an open mind at using everything that's new in Lies of P. Additionally, it's also a good weapon to start with if you don't really know how you want to level up and you don't know your exact playstyle, and you plan on keeping a balanced spread between all your attributes, since it has a balanced C scaling for both of your main stats. For which weapon is the best, frankly it depends on your own experience and playstyle in the genre, whether you're used to using shields and slow weapons in Souls games, or much faster weapons with dodging, since that's going to matter the most. But from playing with all three weapons extensively at the beginning, I'd actually say the rapier might be the easiest weapon to start out with until you switch to another weapon you like, and as soon as you can I would focus on vitality stat to build up your guard regain so you can still block and heal with your faster weapon, and as soon as possible I would swap out the handle to the greatsword's handle to have an on-demand perfect block whenever you need it, since that's seriously extremely OP against stronger enemies and bosses. Just like in most Souls games, leveling up health and stamina will be your best friend for a safe and steady beginning, and you can later put more points into other stats once you feel comfortable with your overall defense. So that's it for a quick guide and all my thoughts on the starting weapons in Lies of P, everyone. I've tried all of them out to gather all the info I could and see which one is the best. Hope the video helped you choose, and if so, like and subscribe for more Lies of P guides as I keep releasing them. Thank you for watching everyone, enjoy the game, and I'll see you all the next time.